Live from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, it's Tea Party Patriots Live. Full coverage of the South Carolina Tea Party Convention. Brought to you by Tea Party Patriots.
Get warmed up. Let's go, folks. Got a great speaker today. All right. Hold on. You might be up there. I've got Lieutenant Colonel Stovall Witt he's the CEO of Coastal Education Foundation. He will be our introductor for our next speaker. So here.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. We live in Myrtle Beach, and one of the things I did in my life, which I'm not overly proud of, but I've spent 6 years working on Capitol Hill. And when I worked on Capitol Hill, I became good friends with a fellow by the name of Mark Rogers. Mark Rogers was Rick Santorum's longtime chief of staff. And one thing I will tell you about working in Washington, many of the people who are senators and members of Congress really aren't what you think they are. But if you're one of the staff guys, you find out what the real folks are like. And Rick Santorum is somebody you can trust. In 1996, he authored what George Will called the most important legislation in the 1990s, the Welfare Reform Act. And frankly, of all the announced candidates and unannounced candidates in this time around, he's got more national security experience than anyone, doing bills for Iran and Iraq, trying to hold them responsible for what they've done. Oh, by the way, he did win 11 states the last time around. The Washington Post doesn't get many things right, but one thing they got right is when they said Rick Santorum is a Tea Party guy before there was a Tea Party. Rick?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Stovall. I appreciate that very much. And it's so great to be back here. This is familiar territory for me. I know I've spoken here before and to this Tea Party group. And just thank you. Thank you for having me back, number one. Thank you for keeping the flame alive. I mean, a lot of folks, particularly in the media, like to write off the Tea Party. But if there's any period of time in our country where the Tea Party is necessary, we only have to look at what this president has done in the last year in running over the Constitution of this country. It has really been really a harrowing experience. I mean, to see just the raw grab of power and what can happen. And so I know all of you who have been subject to a lot of scorn in the media, your concerns about the integrity of this Constitution have been borne out by this president. So I thank you for being that Paul Revere who gave the warning sign back in 2009 and 2010, and for continuing to fight the fight, because this fight is a long way from being over, and we know that it's a fight that we have to win to save America. I also want to thank you. So many people I've talked to here have asked me about my family and particularly about my daughter Bella, and I just want to let you know that she is doing great. She'll be 7 years old in May. So thank you all on behalf of Karen and me from the bottom of our hearts for all of your prayers. They have meant the world to us through a lot of ups and downs. I will share with you that Karen's had a labor of love project that she's been working on that I've helped her on a little bit, which is a book that's coming out next month called Bella's Gift. It's a story of our daughter and the ups and downs of raising and caring for a special needs child. And we're really excited about sharing that message because it is a message that every child matters. Every child matters in America. Everyone. Yeah, what people know, I got a few questions about Bella and tied to the campaign and our eventually dropping out when she was very, very ill. What people don't know is that Bella was one of the reasons that I ran in 2012. It was a combination of Bella, and I know this is going to sound to end the Tea Party, because I was greatly concerned, as all of you were, about Obamacare. And so I was concerned, yes, as a citizen like you were, but I was concerned as a father of a special needs child who had been through a lot in trying to get her the care that she deserved, because even in the world today, people in the medical community see these children as, well, not deserving of the resources that other people are deserving of. And we had to fight, and that's laid out in the book, we had to fight for her care. But what I learned when you get into the world of families with disabilities, as we did, we found out that as bad as it was here in America, in Canada, and the UK, and other places where they have socialized medicine, they actively euthanize these children. When I say actively, they simply don't treat them. So no, they don't put them to sleep. I mean, they don't kill them. They simply deny care or don't give the kind of care that's necessary to save their lives. And so for me, 2010 and 11 and 12, I went out in 2010 and started speaking about Obamacare. And it's because of that all this talk said, well, maybe he's running for president because he's going to places like Iowa. And the reporters would say when I went to Iowa, well, nobody goes to Iowa unless you're running for president, which people in Iowa don't like to hear that. And then I saw the Tea Party. And I saw the difference that any just decent, hardworking Americans can make if they care enough and work hard enough. I saw that difference in 2010, and it inspired me. I said, if you look at it, running for president in 2012 for Rick Santorum was, well, the last time I ran for re-election in Pennsylvania and lost by the largest margin of any incumbent senator in 30 years. So, of course, the natural thing to do is 4 years later announce you're running for president of the United States. But that's what I did. How much sense does that make? None. None. But I ended up competing in 30 states, winning 11. Was the last person standing. Why were we standing? Because we stood for something. We stood for something. We went out and fought on Obamacare, which I thought was critical before it was implemented, to fight, to go out there and see what we could do to stop it from being implemented. We all knew it wasn't going to work. I think even I wasn't prepared for how incompetent the government was going to be. I mean, I knew the bill was bad. I knew the structure was bad. I knew it wasn't going to work. The markets weren't going to work, and all the things I knew it wasn't going to work. I just didn't realize how bad government was. And here's the silver lining, ladies and gentlemen. The silver lining is the American public, they see not only does it not working, but they see how bad the government is running health care. So in many respects, we may have an opportunity here. We have an opportunity where the American public is now not sold. Because many of us believe that what would happen after Obamacare is that it would be bad and it would be horrible, but people would get used to it. And then we'd be stuck with it. That's not happening. It's going to get worse. This year, it's going to get worse. And so we have an opportunity to act. You're going to see the Supreme Court strike down these state exchanges, all right? They're going to strike down this federal exchanges. And And when that happens, we need to be prepared to act. You see, that's important. One of the reasons I was the last guy standing is because we had answers and solutions. We had ideas and a vision. We can't just be against Obamacare, we're going to be for something, because you know what? People are hurting in this country. If there's anything I learned from 2012, is people are hurting in this country. And Americans are looking for responsible leadership. They're not looking for government handouts. They were looking for government handouts. Barack Obama won by 20 points. They're not looking for government handouts. They want to work. They want dignity. They want responsibility. They want to be able to provide for themselves and their families. But they look at both parties and say, neither of them really cares about me. Neither of them really focused on us. And if you look at the fact that in the last election, the exit poll, there was the second most important issue in the last election for president. The second most important issue that people said, it was 23% of voters on the exit polls, said, does he care about people like me? Now, do you think wealthy people care whether the president cares about them? No. Who cares? Lower and middle income folks who are struggling. And guess what? Our candidate only got 19% of that vote. We better have a party and a movement that addresses and cares about the people who are losing hope and feeling like America doesn't work for them anymore. In the last campaign, I went around and I talked about the importance of providing jobs, not just having an economic plan, which I had, to create growth by lowering taxes and regulation and litigation and balancing the budget. All of those things create growth. But here's what I found out. I found this out through the 90s and even in the growing parts of the early part of this century. Yes, rising tide lifts all boats, unless your boat has a hole in it. And look around, ladies and gentlemen. Lots of holes in boats. Lots of people with education that doesn't provide for them to be able to get decent paying jobs. Lots of families that are broken down. I'm sure you saw this statistic. For the first time in the history of the country, more children are being raised in a home without two parents than are being raised with two parents. First time in the history of this country. There are a lot of holes in boats. And so if we're just the party saying, let's grow, 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 and we don't talk about the people who are in those boats, that when that water rises, they sink deeper. They feel like they're drowning. And nobody cares because all they care about is growth. I'm pro-growth, but I'm also pro-worker. We have to make sure that workers in America, the people in the middle, have a chance to live that American dream. And that's why I went out and talked about manufacturing, jobs that sustain families, and manufacturing and energy and construction, and having real solutions to spur a manufacturing renaissance in this country. In states like South Carolina, where you're seeing manufacturing should be coming back in droves right now. We have energy prices that are low. We have a workforce that's ready to go. We have an economic depression in many places around the world. We have stability here. We have intellectual property protections. We have all the things. Why doesn't it grow? Because the government's in the way. The government's in the way. Why can't we have a program that talks about real good jobs in manufacturing, energy, construction? Look at construction. I happen to sit on a company, and a board of a company that's a road construction company. I can tell you, they told me that 25% of their cost is having already gone through state certification approval for the road. They now have to go to the federal level, and it adds 25% cost. To do what? We can't trust South Carolina to build their good roads. We have to have the federal government come in and tell us what to do right? No. Here's what we need to do. We need to cut the federal gas tax, cut it in a big way, back to what it should be there for, what it was sold to the American public for. Remember what? We had no federal significant involvement in transportation before what? Before the interstate highway system. It was a good idea. Dwight Eisenhower was a good idea. But now same thing Washington always does. Take a good idea and then they pile everything on top of it. Now we're providing bike trails and mass transit and all these other things. Let's get rid of all this stuff, put it back, cut the cash tax, leave 3 or 4 cents, whatever it is, to provide for the interstate highway system, get the federal government out of overseeing every highway project in America, and let the states do what they're supposed to do and build roads and bridges. There's all sorts of things we can do to pinpoint those folks with the holes in the boat and say, here's what we can do to help you. Because talking up here, see, we Republicans, we just talk up here. We conservatives, they're just, you ever go watch C-SPAN and put a piece of duct tape across the bottom in the United States Senate so you don't see whose side it is. And I guarantee you within 10 minutes, you're going to find out who the Democrats and Republicans are. You know how you're going to tell? Because Republicans are going to get up and they have charts, and they're going to be line graphs and bar graphs and pie charts. And the Democrats are going to be pictures. Because they're going to tell a story. Americans love a story. Greatest teacher, greatest leader in the world, did he have line graphs and pie charts? No, he taught by parables. We have to start teaching by parables. We have to start leading with a compelling vision, not for America, but for you and for you and for you. That's how we're going to make America whole again. A vision that unites us. A vision not just for great jobs, but for a great education system. I haven't talked to a single teacher, a single administrator that tells me that the problem in our schools today is the curriculum. The problem in our schools today, you talk to any teacher, any administrator, they'll tell you there's a direct correlation between how well that student does and the parents' involvement in that kid's lives and in the school. Right? So what is Barack Obama and the Department of Education, what's their solution? Common Core, which is a curriculum, ultimately, and parents keep out. We don't need your input. We got this. It is fundamentally flawed. Whether it was a good idea or bad idea, it's a flawed idea because it doesn't solve the problem. It's like Obamacare. Yeah, there's a problem out there. This is just the wrong solution. The solution is, let's get it back to empower parents. We need a parents' revolution in education, and Common Core is not part of that revolution. Final thing with workers. You've had a lot of focus on the president's immigration edict, and it's been on appropriately the constitutional abuse that he did. The underlying problem is just as bad. Well, not just as bad, but bad. And that is our immigration system. Let me ask you a question. Since 2000, there have been a little over 6 million net new jobs created since 2000. What percentage of those net new jobs are held by people who were not born in this country? Half? 60? All of them. There are fewer native-born Americans working today than there was in 2000, in spite of 17 million more workers in the workforce who were native-born. So when people tell me the problem with immigration is just illegal immigration, they're wrong. They're wrong. Our immigration system is based on chain immigration, which brings low-skilled workers, and how many a year? Let me give you a perspective. During the Great Wave, 1880 to 1920, an average of roughly 750,000 people came into this country, to where roughly 14% of the population by 1920 were non-native born. How many are we bringing in the last 10, 20 years? 1.1 million a year. We are almost at the same level of non-native born in this country as they were in 1920. And in 1920, they realized, wait a minute, it's affecting our workers. Wages have stagnated. Everybody knows that. Why? Part of the reason. Median income is going down. Why? Part of the reason is we are bringing floods of legal, not illegal, legal immigrants into the country. And so what happened was personal to me. You say, well, personal to you, 1920? Yes, yes. Because my grandfather came to this country in 1923. The next year they passed the Immigration Act of 24, and as a result, my dad had to wait 7 years to come to this country to join his father. I would ask my dad, was that hard to do? I mean, what was it like? He said it was horrible. Benito Mussolini was on the rise at that point, and I had to go out and dress in a brown shirt and march, and it was scary to live in fascist Italy. He said, always finished with this, but America was worth the wait. The best thing we can do for the world is to have a strong, vibrant America, a strong middle of America, where workers, anybody know what percentage of workers in America don't have a college degree? 70%. What's happening to those workers in America, the 70% that don't have a college degree? Who has a vision for them to be able to rise and fulfill the American dream? It's got to be us. It's not going to be them. Their answer is going to be government and redistribution and government benefits. It's not going to be work and responsibility and stability and family. We have an opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, in this election to have a message that's at the core of what made America great and can unify the country. What a blessed opportunity. Let's not blow it. Finally, I want to introduce a couple of guys who are here with me today. I've got two of my sons who are here. A little story about how this, everyone says, how did the election change you? Well, I can tell you one way. My oldest son, John, took a year off from high school to college after he graduated high school, to come work on the campaign. So he traveled with me all over the country, but as many of you remember, I spent a little time here in South Carolina. And so he got to meet some of these guys from South Carolina from a little institution in Charleston called the Citadel. In fact, we had our election night party at the Citadel at the night of the South Carolina primary. After the election was over, he came up to me, and he had already committed to go to a school, a little Catholic school up north. And he said, Dad, I'm going to go to the Citadel. And I said, really? I said, why? He said, well, I saw those men. I said, I want to be like them. He said, I just liked what I saw. And so not only did he go to the Citadel, but his little brother Daniel's at the Citadel, and they're both here today. Where are they? Around here somewhere, right? There they are, right back there. That's John and Daniel. And I know you know probably some Citadel moms. There's no better Citadel mom than my wife, Karen. She's a warrior out there. But speaking of warriors, my final thought. And it's not I hate to say a final thought because it's such a big and important thought. People have asked, what's the difference between last time and this time? What's changed the most? And you've heard some of the things. But you recall in the last presidential go-round, there were 22 debates, only one on national security. And in those 21 other debates, it would be unusual for more than one question. Many didn't have any questions on national security. Obviously, that is a huge issue today. I will tell you that I think what a very senior member of the Netanyahu government told me when I was there a couple of months ago in Israel. He said to me, America has to elect a wartime president. A president who is prepared to lead in a world that will be coming apart. We see it happening. We see what American weakness brings. We see dishonesty, the seeds of dishonesty. What do I mean by that? The dishonesty of this president, and I must say of the previous president, to not tell the American public the truth about who the enemy that we are confronting is. Back in 2006, I gave a speech at the National Press Club. We were losing the war in Iraq at that point. There was talk about withdrawing. This was before the surge. And I gave a speech that said, the reason we're losing is the American public knows that we're not at war against terrorists, but the president won't tell us who we're at war against. And this was President Bush. Right. President Obama's worse. He won't even use terrorists. He uses extremists. Which, if that doesn't scare you, how many in this room have been called an extremist? You see, they can't call you a terrorist, but they can call you an extremist. And if the war's against extremists, right, then we can start looking into everybody. But if the war is against radical Islamic terrorists, then that group gets real narrow, doesn't it? The president doesn't want to narrow that list. He doesn't want to narrow that list. That's why they refuse to use it. That's why they use workplace violence. This is dangerous to your liberty and to your security. In 2006, I gave a speech and called the president out to identify the enemy. Then 2 days later, I was at the White House, and I put it in front of him. I said, Mr. President, it's time to identify the enemy, because unless the Muslim world confronts the cancer within it, then we are going to be in a horrific battle for a long time. We are now seeing that laid bare. That kind of experience, that kind of leadership is key. Ladies and gentlemen, you're going to be important deciders. Number one, who gets in this race and how well they do. I know that very well. I ask you to make sure that you decide wisely. Someone who has a vision that can unite not just the conservative movement, but the country. And do so to make sure that we're safe and strong to protect ourselves and America going forward. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
If I can get my mic. Yes, thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Appreciate your comments about foreign policy. We've had loads of questions asked. We had some comment cards. I think you'll find these questions to be fold well into that. So our first is by Aaron.
Senator Santorum, I thank you for standing up for conservative principles. I think I speak for everyone in this room. Thank you. I'm with a conservative group out at Coastal Carolina University. My question for you is, what would guide your decisions in America's foreign policy, specifically if troops were to be committed?
You don't commit troops unless the national security of your country is at stake. That's the only reason you commit troops. And you only do so if all other options are not acceptable. And I know there's a lot of folks, I hear this all the time, because you want America to be strong, that means you're going to go out and fight wars all over the place. That's just simply not the case. America can project power in lots of different ways, economically, through diplomacy, through what's called soft power, and yes, ultimately, through even the threat, potentially, of military intervention. But the key is to understand that it is in that order, and that no one, look, I have, two young men who may be, one or both of them may end up in the military. I understand what's at stake. I've talked to men, mothers, and dads who've lost young men and young women at war. I've been to Walter Reed and Bethesda. I understand it. And people need to get away from this idea that if you're strong on defense, that somehow or another you're bloodthirsty. Quite the opposite. You understand what's at stake. But you also understand that we have all of these arrows in our quiver, and that occasionally you may have to use all of those arrows. And you have to be prepared when necessary. You can't eliminate or take that off the table, because as we've seen from the president, when you draw a red line and then you don't do anything when it's crossed, first off, you don't draw dumb red lines, right? That are not in the security interest of our country. I'll draw a red line, and I've drawn one. Iran will not get a nuclear weapon. That's a red line you have to draw. Imagine ISIS with a nuclear weapon. Imagine ISIS with chemical weapons. Weapons of mass destruction can't be in the hands of terrorists, and Iran is a terrorist state. So yes, sometimes you have to draw those lines. And when you draw those lines, you have to be willing to act. Because the last thing we need is uncertainty about the role of America in the world. And that's what we have today. Whether you're for President's policies or not, he's been uncertain. He's been completely irrational at times in supporting the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, and now opposing a leader in Egypt, an al-Sisi, who is destroying the Muslim Brotherhood, fighting against Islamic terrorists, and standing for freedom of religion. This is the first Egyptian president to ever go to a Christian service, right? And our president's not for him. This is the kind of confusion that leads to the mess that we have in the world today. One of the things that's necessary is someone who understands all of these situations, clearly has thought through them, has a history, experience. Predictability is a good thing from a leader. Predictability is a good thing as a leader from a strategic point, not a tactical point. I'm not talking about how you execute on the board. So you have to have some uncertainty there. But you need a strategic vision that everybody can understand and follow along. And we don't have that today. And we need it.
Senator, thank you for coming to Myrtle Beach. I'm Cody Fondry. I'm also from the Coastal Carolina Conservative Group, and I'm the chairman. And my question for you today is, do you believe we are in a war on terror or in a war against Islamic jihad? And can you expand on your thoughts on this issue?
That speech that I gave in 2006 at the National Press Club said that terrorism is a tactic. Go back and read it. Saying that we are in a war against terrorism or terror is like FDR saying we're at war against surprise attack, or we're at war against blitzkrieg. Terrorism is not a philosophy. It's not an ideology. In fact, you've heard him saying, well, there are all sorts of different types of terrorists. That's right, because terrorism is a military tactic. We had the courage in the Second World War to say we were against Italian fascism. My father was in this country, he was an Italian, first generation, born there. My uncle, Uncle Bruno, who I know some folks here knew from North Carolina. And were they looked with suspicion? Of course they were. And whose side are they on? And of course the Japanese were the same. The Germans. But we had the courage to identify the enemy. We stopped the political correctness. We didn't care whether we offended someone's sensibilities, because it was important that the president speak the truth to the American public. And the truth is that we are at war against an element of Islam. as I identified a cancer within Islam. At that time, I called it Islamic fascism. Call it radical Islam. Whatever you want to call it, but you have to use the term because it is an offshoot of Islam. It is based on teachings in the Islamic texts. Whether Muslims like it or not, they're there. Right. And they're being used. Right. Which means the only people who ultimately can solve this problem are Muslims. What you need from leaders, as Ronald Reagan did, what did he do? He went out and violated his speechwriters who didn't want him to use it, kept taking it out of the speech, but he kept putting it back in. The evil empire. What is going on in ISIS, what is going on in Al-Qaeda, Hamas, Hezbollah, go on down the list, is evil and must be stamped out.
That's all the questions we have, sir. We appreciate your time with us.
Thank you all very much. God bless, and we'll be seeing you around.
Just real quick, while he signs our Declaration of Independence and Constitution, we'll be back from lunch promptly at 1 o'clock. So please enjoy, and we look back to see you this afternoon.